important to speak about freelancing today because a lot of people that I know are turning to freelancing.
So prepare, keep 3 months for yourself, give yourself that kind of buffer time.
When there is no contract, there is absolutely no responsibility. Freelancers should ask for it.
Freelancers, I think in general, do not pitch their stories well.
Only then will you be able to get the attention of that editor and get him to work with you when he sees the effort that you're putting in.
I would recommend taking a couple of courses. Remember that stress is really, we just talked about mental health.
And we do freelancing not only with journalists, but we do also freelancing with production staff.
One more thing I wanted to say, please buy health insurance.
Hi everyone, this is Durga here. And I am part of NWMI. Thank you so much for joining in, and thank you, Leena, for moderating the session and all the experts who have agreed to be on this roundtable. This is our third webinar. The first two were on different issues. We started off with a webinar 3 weeks back. You'll be able to see the links of those two webinars in the chat box. Please go ahead and look at it because they also have some practical tips and advice from the past. This is a volunteer effort. This is completely an attempt to help journalists during time of crisis and to see how the landscape has shifted because of COVID and how we can support each other. We also request you to fill out a Google survey that we're conducting. We're using this to document job losses, pay cuts, fewer freelance work opportunities, and so on. This will help us. It will guide us in planning the future webinars in terms of making this webinar experience, the most useful for people who need support right now. Thank you. Back to you, Leena.
Thank you, Durga. I think we'll get started. This is third in the series of NWMI's Let Down in Lockdown series, a roundtable on the freelance option, opportunities and challenges. I quickly take you through the panelists we have today. We have here Rupa Jha from BBC. She handles the Indian language operations of BBC in India. Coming in from Delhi, she works with writers in Hindi, Tamil, Telugu, Marathi, Gujarati, and Punjabi languages, and they handle print, digital, and television medium. So there is Rupa, and there is Samar Harlankar, who is the editor of Article 40. It's a news and research website which focuses into the rule of law in India. He was formerly editor of India Spent and a managing editor of HT Hindustan Times. We also have Ashish Dikshit joining from Delhi. He's the editor at BBC Marathi, which is a digital platform. Worked as news editor at IBN Lokmat, a Marathi TV news channel. Also has been worked with CNN, IBN, and Quint, and has a total experience of 14 years in the field of journalism, mostly working with freelancers in Maharashtra. And we have 3 independent journalists joining us. There is Kavitha Muralidharan joining from Chennai. She has covered the metro city and the state and has a 2-decade experience in journalism. She has been a freelancer for the last 5 years and has written for publications The Wire, First Post, Rural India Online, Mint, and The News Minute. We have Meher Ali joining from Aligarh. She's an independent journalist who reports on human rights, social justice issues, and culture. Her work has appeared in The Wire, Two Circles, Himal, South Asian, and she's also a 2016 recipient of the Mumbai Press Club Writing Award for Human Rights Reporting. There is Neha, an independent journalist joining from Delhi who covers politics, social justice, gender in South Asia. She has completed 8 years of freelancing and has been a journalist for 13 years. She has reported for a bunch of international publications, including New York Times, Washington Post, Smithsonian, Foreign Policy, and Al Jazeera. But she says that her best and most impactful work was published by Indian publications like The Wire, Caravan, and Outlook. Neha is also somebody who's going to motivate a lot of you to take the freelance option, as she has won a lot of awards as a freelance journalist. Some of them include the International Press Freedom Award in 2019 by the Committee to Protect Journalists, the prestigious Chameli Devi Jain Award for an outstanding woman journalist, and also the PII ICRC Award for Best Report on Humanitarian Subject in 2015, and a bunch of other awards. But yes, this is a very challenging time for freelancers and for people who have just lost their jobs. It's going to be very tough to navigate this field, but I hope that this conversation is going to give you some idea of how to go about this. So it has been a very rewarding time to be a freelancer for me, because I have won my last 2 journalism awards as a freelance journalist, the Writing Award and the Ladli Media Award. So this is to just let all of you joining here that, that there is things possible as a freelancer. So let's get this started. I'll first call upon the freelance journalists that we have here on the panel to give an idea and to talk a few minutes to get you a sense of what their life as a freelancer is. So let me get started with Neha. Neha, can you please go ahead and tell us something about your life as a freelancer and how rewarding it is, what's the opportunities and what's the challenges that we have here according to you. Thank you.
Hi, all of you. Very happy to join this webinar and would be very happy to provide some kind of practical information and also learn something. I've been a freelancer for the last 8 years. I want to start with saying that why I switched to freelancing was that I was working in a television channel before that. And after 2 years in the television channel, I definitely knew that what I didn't want to do. So I left my job thinking that because I had print experience, I'll go back to print. But for the next few months, I kept looking for a job and I didn't find any. So that's how I started freelancing. So why I'm saying this is because it's okay if there are no jobs. It's okay that some work can be done. In the meanwhile, somebody suggested, an editor was kind enough to suggest that I start reporting. So freelancing, I've been freelancing for 8 years. In December, I will complete 8 years. There are a couple of things currently, something that I have experienced that it requires a little bit of patience and trust in yourself. So don't worry. It may take initial 2-3 months for you to actually understand how to pitch, how to create a steady flow of income, monthly income that can keep you going. So keep 3 months for yourself, give yourself that kind of buffer time. That's very helpful. Apart from that, what really helped me is that I prepared a list of short-term ideas and long-term ideas. So what happened was each time if I would get in touch with an editor and they would ask for a story idea, and I pitched a certain kind of idea and they were not happy with it, I already had some pitches prepared. So that gives you enough time to quickly pitch. The other thing that helped me a lot was a number of fellowships that I kept applying. Often what happens is that you apply for 10 and you get response for 1. So the important thing is, because if you have those short-term ideas and long-term ideas already prepared, and if there is a deadline to the fellowship application, you can keep applying for that. So why I'm saying this is because in my experience, it may be different for other people, but in my experience, in Indian freelancing situation, there are no contracts, the money is very less. There is no news gathering expense, and most of the organizations take months and months to pay after a lot of follow-ups. So you cannot just rely on the freelance money coming from news organizations to take care of your daily expenses, and which is why it's very important to keep applying for fellowships. There are lots of fellowships out there for smaller projects, and fellowships does not mean that residential fellowships. There are certain kind of projects that you can do. Pitching, so what under NWMI, because a lot of our members are freelance journalists from across the country, what we also understood was initially when in 2012 I started freelancing, and this has been the experience of others as well. I think Kavitha will weigh in and Meher will weigh in on that. That what happened was initially you had to know editors personally to pitch ideas, and the work would get commissioned only amongst a certain pool of people, mostly in metropolitan cities. So we realized that it's very important to break that structure so that somebody sitting in Manipur can actually pitch to New York Times and doesn't really have to be friends with anybody to pitch that. So for that, what we did was over 2-3 years, we crowdsourced a list of various organizations, name of those commissioning editors, also the pay bracket, which means if the organization pays somebody 20 rupees and pays you 5 rupees, you should know that this is the pay bracket and how much time do they take to pay. So that list also helped a lot of us, a lot of our members to pitch without having to be part of that network that could only get that kind of work. So that also helped us a lot. So I think I'll stop at that, and in the second round, I'll bring in more information.
Okay, so we have Meher, who has reported from a Tier 2 city, Aligarh. So this is away from metro, so she can give you a perspective as a minority person, how pitching stories has worked out for her and how reporting from a Tier 2 city has worked out for her. Meher?
Hi, everyone. So thank you to NWMI for having this really important series. And hello to my fellow speakers. I have been freelancing for 7 years, but not consistently, so on and off. And I've been a journalist for about 11 years. Before that, I was in development. So my experience of freelancing has been challenging. I came into freelancing after working with a magazine, and I thought that it would be easier than it was. I found that it's not possible to make money just through freelance. Like, that's one of the things that has been a gradual realization, but it has been a realization. So I think one of the things that I would suggest to journalists is people who are getting into freelance is to think about freelance, but not to jump into it full time until and unless you also have some kind of a income stream figured out. Neha mentioned fellowships. I would suggest also other things, other skills that journalists have from their training that they can monetize on. It could be editing, it could be graphic design, it could be other skills that they have. So freelancing, yeah, I mean, it has been tough for me. And since I've been based in Aligarh for 5 years, so the challenge of reporting from a small town is that, number one, is that obviously, there's a sense of responsibility that you want to represent the place that you live in, and you want to cover the issues that are underreported. But the challenge there is that it's difficult. It makes it harder to pitch it, because there are only certain stories that people want to hear that come out of Aligarh, and primarily focused on AMU or sectarian violence. So if there are other stories like, maybe heritage related stories or anything of that sort, it's difficult to see, okay, who is going to accept this particular story when I'm thinking about publications. So that has been one of the challenges. And the other one has been, obviously, the political scenario in this country has made it very difficult for all journalists really to work uninhibited and free of mental stress. As Leena, I was discussing with you, it was not really COVID-19 that really had an impact on my reporting. I mean, yeah, I have not reported for a while, but even before that, it was CAA, right? Citizenship Amendment Act, and the protests that followed. Basically, it was that law that really had an impact, because I was just not sure about whether to report on it, to join the protests, or to get my papers ready, So in a situation where one's kind of existence also in some ways, or one's personal safety and security is compromised, how does one continue to do the work that they do, right? So that's basically one of the things. And the question was also then, what are those tools and strategies that you use to cope with this kind of stress and the situation that you find yourself in? And I don't have an answer, really, like a sure answer for that, but I definitely think that is something that needs to be discussed. I'll leave it at that.
Okay, thank you, Meher. Now let's move on to Kavitha. Kavitha is somebody who has been working as a freelance journalist from Chennai and reporting from Tamil Nadu, all over Tamil Nadu. So Kavitha, can you give us your perspective a bit here?
Hi, thanks. You can hear me, right?
Yes.
Thank you. Thanks for organizing this. I think it's most important to speak about freelancing today, because a lot of people that I know are turning to freelancing, obviously because of the layoffs that's happening at a very big level in Tamil media too. For me, I think I started off in 2015, which was fairly early. So I had an advantage of time. There were people I think Neha made a very right point about knowing the editors and that kind of building a personal relationship, which needs to be broken, but it kind of helped me too. But there were people who wanted to do an interview of Perumal Murugan, and they sought me out. So these were the things which helped me. But I think now there could be huge challenges, because Vigadan, a prominent Tamil magazine, had laid off 170 people, of which 80 are journalists. And these people most of them are looking at freelancing because the job market is so bad. So I think what needs to be discussed here is how to, in Tamil media especially, I wanted to speak more on that. Freelancing as an option doesn't exist. The payment is terribly low, and there are no space for freelancers. So I think we need to also discuss about regional
writers, regional journalists in terms of freelancing and what could be done about it. I think that's the most important thing. In my personal experience, I've been trying to loosely encourage, not a network kind of thing, but I've been trying to people who come and ask me how to go about this. I've been trying to put them with some editors that I have had the opportunity to write for, and trying to help them, trying to ideate with them, trying to help them with the pitching and all. But I think this needs a larger discussion, and this needs a proper guidance in terms of all the people who've lost. I know a very well-known Tamil journalist who started a YouTube channel, and it is going to take so much of time for the YouTube channel to become monetarily beneficial for him. So these things need to be discussed in detail.
Thanks, Kavitha. So we have participants joining from all over India, just Siliguri, Ranchi, Leh, Begusarai, Vadodara, Rajkot, and places like Kasaragod. And we have also people joining in from UK, US, and Canada. Just to put this idea that we all have been speaking about our work as freelancers, it's a very difficult place to be in right now. It has always been a very difficult place. As it has pointed out, one of the most important things to have here is a community, because often you need someone, supporting and backing. And to all the women journalists who are here, I would ask you to join something like an NWMI, because I'm a recent person who has joined this in the last 1 year, and this network has been hugely important and supportive to people like us, because you are working by yourself. You have no idea of what is open where a fellowship is open, where's a place that you can write for, who's the editor to contact to. So this community of journalists that you will have around you is very important. Build on them. Next is that there is this, as a freelancer, there is no pay, there is no money coming your way. Whatever the pay comes in will not be worth the work that you are going to put in. So it's going to be a hard life for you. So let me not give you any fancy expectations on that front. There is no contracts in this place. There is no guarantee that your travel expenses will be covered, or you'll get solid support till the time your story is shaped. It could be dropped anytime. So, but this is a place where you can build a career for yourself if you're going to pitch yourself, brand yourself, and build a career. And then when the going is good, you can join a publication. So social media will play a huge role for you to get your stories out. Let's take it to the editors now to get an idea of what they expect from us freelancers, and how to approach them would be a very important tip that we'll be looking from the editors. So we have editors from BBC who has been handling the Indian languages. So we have Rupa Jha right now with us, who leads the Indian languages operations in BBC India. So let me start with her. Rupa, could you please go ahead and tell us as to what you expect freelancers to do and how to make our life easy? Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm so thrilled to be part of this, because when I started my journey of Head of Indian Languages, that's the official title of my position. I first went to Hyderabad of NWMI's convention to reach out to these lovely women, and to see and to do my reach out to good journalists. And I remember meeting a lot of you. I remember meeting Neha there. So thank you for inviting me for this conversation. First of all, while I heard all the brilliant freelance journalists, I've been following Neha's work for sure, and others as well. I really felt extremely sad to hear that how media houses have been treated freelance journalists, because I've been with the BBC. This has been my first organization. I joined when I passed out, and this has been my organization. So I have not had the exposure of working with too many media houses. But in my career of 20 years, I've seen that how critical and relevant role freelancers have been playing within BBC and outside also. I'm very well aware of it. And they are really rated very high, because they bring that critical edge to the journalism that media organizations flaunt, and then, they get their more audience. We have slightly different operation. I'm sure Ashish can give more in depth, because he works very closely, and he runs Marathi service, which is one of the languages that I am the editor of. I mean, I look after. Ashish is the real editor. I am the Farzi editor. I'm very happy to talk in Hindi also, if there are people who were not, English journalists here. So please, anytime if you want, Leena, me to speak in Hindi, I'll be most comfortable. I look after work for Hindi, Tamil, Telugu, Punjabi, Gujarati, Marathi. So this is the bouquet of BBC's Indian languages right now. And we have two kinds of freelancers. One is, so first of all, we give contracts. So we have a contract. We cover all the news gathering expenses. And there is no difference that how a reporter, staff reporter, when he or she travels and what a stringer or a freelancer, when they travel, there'll be no difference of provisions or facilities. We do that. There is no difference of that. So that is one thing that we do take care of it. We take care of the training. So whenever we engage with people, and we think that they are good and they also want to work with us, then we find time to train them. Either we bring them to Delhi. Right now things are different, so we do a lot of online training as well. So we provide that training, we provide equipment, not all the time because we would like to. So what we are looking for is good ideas, and how we have worked, because obviously it's always easy to and it's good on economics of the budget of the organization when you have good freelancers, because obviously you're not paying them big salaries, etc. Our payment structure is not what we would really want. The regional language payment structure is, of course, slightly different from the English. Even within BBC, there's a different budget allocation. But we try to see that what is an amount which is respectable. We have retainers, so which means that we pay them a fixed amount as a salary. So we call them retainers. We have, people who you will be paid per piece. We try to make payments in time. So I'm just setting this, things here that I think that, this is the bare minimum that all media organizations should be doing. And I'm quite, I feel that we need to do more. We look for good ideas, and there is a system, there's a pitch form, which we want people to fill. But, if you're not comfortable with doing all these pitching forms, and they tend to, sometimes they tend to become very bureaucratic. So we're very happy to take things in a simple written form also. And if you like the idea, then there's a structure, there's a planning team we have. You deal with them, your idea is commissioned. If the idea is commissioned, and for some reason we are not able to use it, for whatever reason, your payment will still be done. So we take care of that. So I'll stop here because I think, as we get more questions, I'll explain more, and, I'd like Ashish also to pitch in, but this is how we work. But idea is really, and it's, sometimes we are language agnostic. If you have a good idea, and we don't go for metro big cities freelancers, because we do want to reach out to the areas which are not being covered by us. We have enough staff based in big cities. So sometimes we do prefer people who are in far off areas of states where we don't have the structure and the network of coverage. So and if you can't write in English, but we want your idea, so you write in the language you want and we get it translated. And then that goes into various language sites. We have digital operation, as I told you, Leena. So all these are 6 sites that we run, and we have, which is very video led. So we have shifted our focus quite a bit on video, but texts are also most welcome. We do a lot of photo features, etc. Visual, different kind of visual element we always welcome. And we do freelancing not only with journalists, but we do also freelancing with production staff, production technical staff, like, shoot, editors, sound, vision, directors. So we do freelancing with all sorts of people.
Thank you, Rupa. Thank you for getting us an idea of what kind of stories and what kind of pitches you're looking forward to. Also, let's move to Samar, who is the editor of Article 14, news and research website, which focuses on stories of rule of law in India. So Samar, please tell us what you look forward to freelancers who approach you, and what is your guidelines to how to navigate this field. Thank you.
So I was saying that, of course, thank you for having me here. I've worked with freelancers for quite a while I was at Hindustan Times, and ever since I left, of course, all my work has largely depended on working very closely with freelancers. And the first thing that strikes me about working with freelancers is that I just don't seem to get enough proper pitches from freelancers. I know there are lots out there, but I somehow find that when it comes to doing stories, I'm always struggling for reporters somehow, which leads me to the fact that there's a mismatch between freelancers and between well, at least I can speak for the few independent media outlets that are there. I can't speak for all of journalism because, as all of you have already noted, it's a difficult world for freelancers. But the fact is that I think the problem is that freelancers, I think in general, do not pitch their stories well. And to me, this is a continuing problem because if there is something happening, I find I am the one reacting. I don't get that many story ideas. And when the ideas come in, the pitches are completely unclear. Usually they are, would you like a story on such and such thing that has happened? That is not the way to pitch a story. Of course, we might want a story, but you have to convince me that this is a story worth doing. And that very, very few freelancers I find do that well. And for that, I think it's very important to write a good pitch. And I think the first thing, so I think there are 2 or 3 things about a pitch that are very important. One is you have to convince whoever you're selling it to that this is a compelling story. Because at the end of the day, we are storytellers. And unless we are telling you that this is a great story to tell, I'm not likely to be that interested. The second thing is perspective, context, or what I call why I should care. Now, you know, a lot of stories are broken routinely on Twitter, wherever, or social media, etc. But a lot of them, so breaking stories is, I think, something that is not very common. But if you are not breaking a story, but following up a story that's continuing across you, around you somewhere, it may be the CAA riot, you know, it could be, you know, in the middle of a riot or whatever. You always have to find something there that will persuade your editor that this is something that I should care about. And that's up to you to provide that context and that perspective, the whole why I should care. Because if you cannot convince your editor of why he or she should care about the story, it'll be far more difficult for the editor to sell it to the readers. So I think it has to start from the writer itself. So I think it's very important to get a good pitch in. For example, you know, I'll tell you a good example. A local story. Somebody asked the question already. I see on a local story. How do you sell that to a national audience? A few days ago in Karnataka, there was a Dalit man, who was attacked and beaten for touching some upper caste man's bike. Is this a local story? In one sense, it's a completely local story. You can tell if you find somebody in, say, Bangalore who would want to do this story. This is all appeared in little bits and pieces in local papers, usually as you know, a 4-para story on page 7 or whatever, at least in the newspapers. But this story obviously begs a larger question in the sense that, is this something that's continuing? Of course, we know it's continuing. So the first thing you would do if you're covering a story like this and selling it to someone is that you would first find out things about this man that you don't know. Maybe he has a life, obviously. What was he trying to do? You know, what exactly happened there? So first of all, humanize that man, A, and B, provide the larger perspective. There's a lot of NCRB data, Crime Records Bureau data, for example, visible. You can certainly figure out a trend and sell that story as a larger story. And the simple fact of the matter is, simple explanations are not given in many stories in Indian publications and in pitches, certainly, as to the simple fact as to where Dalits lie on the hierarchy, how their lives are in a state like Karnataka, etc. Those simple explanations must be given because most readers have no clue about these kind of things. So I think this is very important. I think when you're writing that pitch, so you should have all this, you should have the background, you should also have who you're talking to for the story. That is often not clear. You know, if sometimes it says, I will be speaking to so-and-so activists. So that's not enough. You need to say, which government official are you talking to? Who specifically will you be talking to? And the third thing, of course, is deadline. What is your deadline? So I think if you put in a pitch with all these three, it's very much easier to look at. And these are the things certainly I have always looked for, and these are the things I usually find missing in most pitches.
Yes, thank you, Samar, because a lot of questions has been coming in on how to write a perfect pitch. So I think you have given them an idea of what an editor expects in the pitch. So now let's move on to the last person on the panel, Ashish Dikshit. Ashish, I don't have your video on. I hope you are there. Yes. Also, please, your. Yeah. So Ashish is working with BBC Marathi, and let's get an idea from him on what he expects our freelancers. Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Leena. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Jagriti and NWMI for inviting me. I think this topic has now become extremely important because a lot of people are forced to do freelance work. They are losing jobs. And so that I think that's why now the time has come that we start taking our freelancers seriously and redefine the relationship we have, I mean, the organizations have with freelance. I will talk more about Marathi market, which, in a way represents regional markets, because I think the situation is more or less similar in, say, Gujarati, Kannada, Telugu, and other markets. I will not talk about the BBC because Rupa has talked about it. I will talk more about other organizations. I will not name anyone, but then I think it's a problem that is prevalent across India. In English, some people, choose to do freelance work. That's not the case in regional markets. People are forced to do it because they don't get jobs or they lose jobs. I have hardly seen anyone in Marathi market who has chosen to do freelance because the amount of money you receive is so less that you just can't survive on it. They are paid a pittance. That is something we cannot change overnight, because even the budgets for regional newspapers, regional news channels, and regional websites are so small that it is very difficult for an editor to give large amounts to freelancers. So, and we need to accept that reality. And there are various reasons, and there's no point going into them because this is not the place where we can discuss, financial aspect of news operations. But then what can we do in this situation? Because obviously this is not an ideal situation and this needs to change. So I think there are certain things that we can do, even in tighter budgets. There are a few points which I have written down while others were talking. I think the first and the most important thing is contracts. We always do contracts at the BBC, but there are many organizations who do not do it. When there is no contract, there is absolutely no responsibility. Even if a freelancer gets abducted or whatever happens to him, he gets infected because of coronavirus or whatever, there is no way to prove that he was on an assignment for a particular organization. So I think contract is the most important thing. Freelancers should ask for it or organizations should give it. I think very difficult for, say, a freelancer in a small town in Tamil Nadu or a small town in Andhra Pradesh or Maharashtra to call up an editor in Chennai or Hyderabad or Mumbai and ask her or him for a contract. I think it's the responsibility of the editors to do it, because it doesn't need it doesn't cost any money to do a contract. It's just an assurance that, hey, you are working with us. There is some sort of bond that exists between you and us. But then I think the second point is there should be no exclusive contracts if you're not giving them monthly fixed incomes, because there are organizations who do not give fixed monthly income, and they also expect their freelancers to be exclusively working with them, and that makes it very difficult for that freelance. Now, in the times of a pandemic, we need to think from the basic human point of view. I am giving that freelancer 3,500 rupees a month average, and I expect that person to survive on 3,500 rupees, and that is not going to be possible. So let me remove that exclusive contract so that person can work with others. So these are simple things that we can rethink. The most important thing, I think, is to treat them with dignity. That we do at the BBC, but I have seen organizations where it does not happen. So if you cannot send your reporter because it is too dangerous, then why not send a freelancer is how people think. That should not happen. Treat him like, or treat her like a human being. If you are not able to send your reporter for a reason, don't send a freelancer. We take so much care at the BBC that, there are places where we send our reporters with proper precaution, but we do not send our freelancers, probably because they are not trained enough or, they're protected enough. So these things should be taken care of. Then if you cannot give them money, give them time. Samar talked about pitches. So I think we as editors should spend more time talking to them and telling them how to write pitches. What exactly does this organization want? And also giving them feedback. So yesterday I spent half an hour speaking with my freelancer in a small town in Maharashtra, giving her feedback about a story which she had recently done. Because if we give them feedback, they will not repeat mistakes, and that will make them better journalists. That will improve the quality of their journalism, because probably they are from small town, probably they haven't received the experience or education that you have. So if you make them better journalists, that will help them get other jobs as well. So I think, one, talk to them, spend time with them, tell them how to make pitches, tell them what exactly the organization wants, and give them feedback regularly. Then I think freelancers should also diversify their offer in pandemic times, because now it does not matter whether you are in Vishakhapatnam or you are in Coimbatore or you are in Agra, because now if you have a laptop, you are as good as a desk person in Delhi or Bombay or Calcutta. Is it possible for you to report as well as to do desk shifts? Can you do translations as well? Can you learn how to shoot using a mobile phone? So freelancers also should think about all these possibilities. And the last point which I would like to make is, again, about gender balance, because I think in regional markets, there is, freelancers means men. I mean, freelancer hai to aadmi hi hota hai. It cannot be a woman. We have tried to break that, and at the BBC we have a lot of women freelance journalists, and they're doing fantastic work. So even in BBC Marathi we have great reporters, also people working on the desk as freelancers. We should try to break that gender balance, and the responsibility lies with editors and organizations. Priyanka Charya had talked about one of the issues. She had asked, how do we deal with editors who don't respond to pitches? I think there comes the communication bit, because communication has become more difficult in the present time, because everyone is working from home. You should not shy away from sending pitches again and again. It's fine. I think you should try to fix an appointment with your editor and ask him or her, is there a way to improve the communication? So this is what I wanted to say largely. I will repeat myself what I said in the beginning. I think now that there will be more freelancers and organization will depend more on freelancers, it is high time that we think of reshaping this relationship between organizations and freelance. We need to rethink. Thank you.
Thank you, Ashish. A lot of valuable opinions in this. Ashish, when you're talking about not being treated equally, freelance reporters, I could see that Neha, Meher, and Kavitha and me were all like shaking our heads and couldn't agree more, because this has been a relationship in which we have been, it's not just freelancers as such, news media, when we talk about the big ideals and what they stand for and giving the voice to the voiceless. Often the most unfairly treated is the people that work for them, that is their reporters. Very, very often reporters have not had any great help when they came to crises, meeting legal consequences of what they report, and have suffered as a result. There is also a huge mental health crisis in the industry that nobody talks about and offers absolutely no support to. So even if you are on the payrolls of a news organization, there are so many ways that you could be treated very unfairly. So when it comes to freelance reporters, then you are even a step below, and you are often easily disposable to them. Also, to all the freelance writers who are joining in and is interested about pitches, there is one thing, because from my experience to working on with an editorial team, is that India is brimming with exciting stories. Any place you go to, there are n number of stories that are untold in India. So if you think that the story is valuable, of course, there are thousands like you who think that story is special and needs to be told and needs to be heard. But often what, as Samar has pointed out, lacks is the proper kind of pitch that connects to the editor who's going to read it. So for a 1,000-word story, most of the freelancers would think, okay, a 2-line pitch would work. But no, that won't work. I have written a 1,000-word pitch for a 1,000-word story and still got rejected. So, I write bad pitches. So I think journalists all over who thinks that we are fantastic reporters and all that, we are not fantastic pitchers. So we need some kind of coaching, some kind of effort to put in for a story that needs only 1 day of reporting. I have sat in and built a pitch that took 2 or 3 days. So that kind of effort you need to put in, because you are in a market where there are a lot of people competing for attention. And if you know your story is good, that kind of work you need to put in, because only then will you be able to get the attention of that editor and get him to work with you when he sees the effort that you're putting in. Me first go to Neha. Yes, Neha, you have some points to talk about. Neha, please go ahead. I'll be bringing questions one.
Thank you, Leena. Just a couple of points, also responding to some of the questions and some things that Samar, Ashish, Rupa, Kavitha, and Meher said. I first want to say that, like Samar was also saying and Ashish was saying, please prepare some pitches in advance. So which preparing pitches also means making your basic phone calls to call up people, and everybody, all of us have certain areas of interest. So it's always helpful to have some pitches already in advance. If those pitches are exclusive stories, it also helps break that local and national divide. And that also, because you're fully prepared and you've already prepared that pitch for an exclusive story, you can immediately pitch. So that is one part. Somebody else asked where to find fellowships. Amu is definitely sharing some lists, but there is a newsletter from a place called ijnet.org. I'll also write it down in the chat box. Please subscribe to that newsletter, because why I have particularly found that useful is because all the international fellowships, awards, everything is posted in this newsletter, and it comes to you every week. So it's good to subscribe to that. Third thing, somebody asked me about contracts. So while we all are aware there are no contracts, and we should push organizations to issue contracts. But right now we have to work with what is happening. We all have been pushing, but most organizations say that they would do it, but they don't do it. And having the experience of somebody who's also facing legal cases, and because I did not have a contract, the organization I wrote the story for is not helping me. And in fact, they also wanted to deny me payment, saying that there is no official contract to pay you. So to that extent, because there was pressure from the government, I want to tell you that if the organizations are not issuing contract, when you pitch a story and the editor says that this story, they're ready to commission that story, write to them 3 sentences. One is, please agree to pay within like 6 weeks or 10 weeks of the publication of the story. If there is a legal case, please, would you agree to take care of it? And similarly, the third, if you're traveling to some place and if you think that there is some kind of risk involved, please mention it, that if in a situation of emergency, they will step in and help you. So there are these 3 major things that you should get editors to agree to on email, so that you have some written record, even if you don't have a contract. So that way, if you're denied payment or if something happens, you can always show those emails back. So that is very important. Somebody asked me about ID cards. A lot of us have struggled without press cards, but recently a number of organizations have started that, and I think this is something that gave me a cue as well, to get organizations to issue at least contributor cards or temporary ID cards, even if they can't give you like a full press cards. So at least for 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, whenever you're doing the story, you have a temporary press card from the organization that you're writing the story for. So that is something that you should push for. Somebody also asked how many days, if it's a current story, within 2 days, if the organization does, that is the rule I follow. And I've taken this tip from a number of people in NWMI. Within 2 days, if the organization does not respond, send a reminder. If it doesn't happen, and if it's a developing story, send it to 3. Lots of times, a lot of us have had this experience that you've pitched to 4, 5, 6, the 6th organization finally agrees. So there is no shame in that. One more thing I wanted to say, please buy health insurance, the basic health insurance, because most of us don't buy it, and because there's no, when we're working with organizations, sometimes they cover it, but as freelancers, we need to have basic health insurance. So please buy that. Also, the last thing I wanted to say was, most of the time, even if the organizations that we write for are very progressive and well-intentioned and all, they take forever to pay. They may write stuff like, please be patient. They may not respond to the mails. So what I do is every day, 30 minutes in the morning before starting work, I send reminders. So I also want to tell all the freelancers, please don't be ashamed of sending reminders. People who are not paying you should be ashamed. And why I'm saying this is that because we're often guilt-tripped into demanding payments, and it takes like year and a half sometimes to get the money. So please, 30 minutes every day, please devote it to some accounts and sending reminders. Thank you.
So these are very important points. There are a lot of questions coming in about where to go for ID as freelance writers. So what Neha said is to, if you're doing a long story for that particular period, ask for ID for the organization. And I have been personally offered a contract recently, and that's the only time that I've received a contract for a freelance writer. Whereas when I was working 5 years back with the Caravan, we did try to form some sort of contract and send it to writers, but often we didn't get the writers sometimes to look at it and send it back, or there was some confusion about the clauses, and then it never happened, or it never fell through. So recently, I have no idea of the current status of the contracts, but there are other organizations who are trying to put in contracts. So even if you don't have a contract, please, as Neha said, put it in an email once you have had a conversation with the editor. Always put it in the email about what the payment is, what the timeline is, what the deadline is, and what the kill fee will be. If you can ask for a kill fee, I think you should all ask for a kill fee for the work you have done. So mention a small percent of your fee as kill fee, and ask them to cover whatever the travel expenses will be for the reporting. This is some very useful legal stuff that you should be careful when you are doing a story before you get out on the ground. Just make sure that this is all in writing. Let's take Meher or Kavitha. Do you want to add on to the pitching idea, or any other questions of this unequal playground that we have as freelance writers for organizations?
So a lot of the things, some of the things have been touched upon, but basically my reality in terms of as a freelance journalist is that I am in the middle. I do freelance work, but then I also do some other writing projects. So I'm not a full-time journalist, but these are my realities, okay? And these are the realities that maybe people who are entering may get into. So the pro is that a freelancer, you get to do the stories that you really want to do. You get to develop an area of interest or expertise, and you can pursue long-term projects without worrying about daily deadlines and tasks. You also may become known for this area of expertise and develop your own specific identity as a journalist, as opposed to being a journalist who works for such and such media house. And your stories may have a real world impact. The cons of freelancing, as we have said, are you don't get paid sometimes, you get paid late, you don't know how much you're going to get paid. When you inquire about it, some editors may get offended as they perceive your questions to mean that you lack trust in them, or that you're forcing them to focus on your individual need when they should be doing 1,000 other things, when they can be doing. I would say always inquire before you do a story about the general timeline when you expect to get paid. And if courage and confidence, ask for a specific date, and then let me know how it goes, because I have not done that. If someone is not willing to answer a simple question of when you can expect your pay, they're not worth your time. I would just say that going in. See, when you go through these difficult times, when someone is not answering or whatever, you can, rather than seeing it as a negative thing, maybe you can see it as a way of filtering through publications and getting to the editor that you really want to work with, without burning the bridges though with the other editors. Some publications are upfront about telling you how much they pay, others don't. So never do a story before discussing payment and payment date. Also, another challenge will be, and this is a challenge even in newsrooms, is that your writing may be edited in a way that you don't like, and the copy editors stand by their edits. In that case, remember that the writer always knows better. The journalist knows their story the best. But unless you have made a factual error or there are grammatical errors in your copy, you shouldn't be getting the last word. I would say that in my experience, this has been great. I mean, editors have been great in this regard. So my advice for freelance journalists who are journalists who are entering into freelance, like they're complete newbies, I would say if you've gotten laid off, you need to just take 2 weeks off at least from work. You should go into a total media blackout without social media, email, TV, newspapers. Take this time to decompress rather than jumping straight into freelance work. do the things that you enjoy doing rather than the things that you should do as a journalist. You could, okay, and then after this, you should take a look at all the work that you've done. Take inventory about all the writing that you've done. And there are 2 questions that you can ask yourself. Number 1, why do you want to do freelance? Why do you want to become a freelance journalist? It's really important to answer this question and not have a very clear, definitive answer, but just a general idea, because there has to be some goal that you're working towards rather than just doing the stories that just appear in the newspaper and then just chasing the ones that everybody else chases. So why are you doing this? What is it that motivates you to do freelance journalism? And honestly, if you can't come up with an answer that really touches your heart, maybe it's time to look at other things that you may be interested in. The second question is, are any of your pieces that you've published when you were a working journalist, when a full-time journalist, are they award worthy? If you're not sure, select some that you like and get feedback from colleagues and friends, and submit the ones that you think that you can win awards for, right? And why would you want to do that? Because if you're leaving full-time journalism, it is important to get recognition for the work that you've done. And that may come from just the simple process of applying for the awards, not winning it, but just writing it out why you think your work matters. The third thing is, once you finish the stage, now you're at a stage where you may realize that you're just done with journalism. Remember, you can be done with freelance journalism at any stage. That's also one of the great things, is you can quit whenever you want and do something else that you really want to do. Don't stick to it if it does not bring you joy. And I say this at the risk of sounding like a life coach, but I would really say that. If you still want to go ahead with it, if it still appeals to you, and if you still have this drive, like, no, I really want to do this, I would recommend taking a couple of courses in freelance journalism, because it's different than going to J school. And I can share some of these later on. I have a list with me that I can share with Leena. If you can't afford to take these courses, read some books on them, and specifically focused on, and this is my recommendation, the business side of freelancing. And it could be freelance writer as well. They have a lot of books on that. So the business side of it, and how to communicate with editors. What is the relationship that you want to have with your editor? What are just things that you cannot accept? What are things that you're okay with? So that you have this kind of thought, you have this idea in your head when you're going into this, because it is a relationship. And long-term relationship will only last if you bring to it clear expectations of your own, and also allow the editor to kind of, be okay with whatever the editor is saying, like accept it or not accept it. That's the last thing, but to be able to listen to what they want also. So once you're done with your training, take a look at your story inventory again. Which stories are the ones that you really like writing and researching? Which are the ones that you really enjoy doing? And which are the ones that you really didn't enjoy at all? If you're getting into freelance, this will help you find your niche, which is the most important thing. What are you going to be known for as a freelance journalist? You don't want to be chasing the story that everybody's chasing. You want to be chasing the story that you want to do, but also the one that sets you apart in the long term. So it'll help you find your niche or particular areas or topics where you'd like to start work. And I'm saying start in bold because you're just starting. Things are going to take time. You can always broaden your niche, but starting with these topics will be easier and also less stressful. Remember that stress is really, we just talked about mental health. Find strategies and ways to keep stress down. Don't go into a story that you know that it'll be such a difficult thing for you to do and you're not ready for it. If you're not ready for it, don't do it. There will be another story that comes along, but you will be ready for. Just wait for that story, okay? I mean, also, these are just my suggestions, by the way. I'm not saying do this. I know it sounds like it, but these are just my suggestions. So I would say, my father used to say, give things 6 months. 6 months is a good time frame to see whether something will work out or not, okay? So I would say the same to you. Give it 6 months before checking in again to see how you're doing. At this point, I would say also that it is time to take inventory. What are the relationships that you've built with editors? If you haven't, maybe it's time to send an email to this publication that you really, really want to write for, just to say, I like what you're doing or whatever. I mean, they may not respond, but still, like, it's a nice gesture. touch base with colleagues that you've lost touch with, because freelancing is very isolating sometimes, you know. And this is something that that Neha touched upon also. Like NWMI is one such community, but it doesn't have to be the only one. You can have other groups that you are a part of. So basically what I would say is, after 6 months, see where you're at. What are the difficulties that you're facing? If it's money, then it's time to think about a secondary income stream where you can, and to take the time to invest your time and energy in it. Most of the time, it has been my experience that freelance journalism will not bring you a steady income. You should look at a steady income stream. And one of the things is like what skills, one of the ways to see what a secondary income stream can be for you is to look at what comes naturally to you, what skills come easily to you, and to monetize on those. And that's it basically. I would say just take time off sometimes and spend it with your family and enjoy yourself. That's it.
Yep. Thank you. I think there are a lot of valuable inputs with people who are starting to freelance can connect to. There's a question that has come in, and this was for everyone: how to make local stories relevant to national publications, and also to Kavitha, freelance options. What are the freelance options available in Tamil, like reporting, translations, editing, and how much can we earn from these?
As I said, Tamil freelancing is very dull. One of my friends who used to work for a prominent Tamil media has been laid off, and he's been asked to freelance for the same media organization as a weekly columnist for the digital space, and he was offered 250 rupees per episode. He didn't obviously take up the offer because it's very sad. I mean, he would have to spend more than that to do that one particular episode. So he didn't obviously take it. So I think Tamil media is very sad. But I also coordinate translations for rural India online, the Tamil translations for rural India online. And Sahapedia asked me for a person for copy editing. I'd put in touch someone who's just lost his job in a media, in a Tamil media. So these things are happening, but I think it's far and few. Also, I wanted to put across a suggestion, which I have moderately tried with a moderate success, weighing in translation as an option. There is knowledge and expertise among Tamil language people writing in Tamil. I think translation should help as a tool if you are looking at larger national stories. I could come up with a personal example. I did a story for Rural India Online. I think it's my personal based on a Hindu festival in Madurai, which it happens in April for 9 days every year. The devotees are expected to wear a particular kind of costume for the 9 days. And when I did the story, I discovered that most of the people who stitch these costumes, at least 70% of them are Muslims. It was a very fascinating story for me. But I imagine a person sitting in Madurai and who would have probably attended all these festivals could be in a better position to say the story, to make it a story. But she or he is being denied an opportunity because it's in Tamil. I have translated Jairani's articles for the Wire. She attended the NWMA meeting in Hyderabad and she presented a paper on Dalit representation in mainstream media, which I had translated, that appeared in the Wire. After that, she had written many articles. So translation, and recently I should also record this. She's started writing in English. Like she's just sent her first article, which she wrote in English, to the Wire yesterday. So I think you should allow Tamil journalists to pitch with some help in translation. The Wire, I have done it with the Wire. I have done it with the News Minute. So I think every other person should try and do it for themselves, because I can say confidently that the knowledge and expertise of Tamil journalists are really, really very important, and I think they need a national audience.
Yeah, thank you, Kavitha. And to the editors, the question that had come in that for journalists from smaller cities and towns, Samar, I think, has talked about how you can link those incidents to the bigger scene, and even those very localized incidents can be projected in the national importance of the scene or the importance that they deserve. So Samar, can you tell us that these journalists from smaller cities and towns who can't do PR with editors can develop relations that will help them get freelance work? So that's one question that Samar.
Yeah, I don't know what PR, I simply work by way of ideas and pitches. And the PR, I think, is a process that comes through when you do a good story. If you do a good story and it sells well and you have a reputation for supplying good pitches, keeping to deadlines and doing good work, I think that's the best PR that's possible. Everything else, I think, is just PR. So I think the best way to build a relationship essentially is to keep to your commitments, keep to your deadlines, and deliver what you promise. At least to me, there's no better way of building a relationship. However nicely you may talk, and however effusive you might be, if you cannot keep your commitments, I'm not likely to have, I'm likely to take a dim view of future relationships with you. So I think it's just better to deliver what you promise. That's the best way of building relationships.
So what I meant was not to build PR, but the issue is no matter you submit your stories on time, you produce quality work. Despite that, there's so much competition, and people who might live in metros, they might end up eat your work because they have access to the whole state, and because they are closer to editors, you after some time you find out that the kind of stories you are doing from your area are being done by reporters who live in cities like Mumbai, suppose. So how do you tackle this situation? Because they have opportunity to, you know, to meet these editors and all. So this doesn't happen to us. So how do you tackle this situation?
I can only speak for myself. Obviously, everyone differs on all this, but I can only speak for myself. And we have reporters writing from small towns. And again, it comes back to, I think, that same point. I don't really care if I know somebody very well, personally, socially, whatsoever, whatever. If your story is really good, if your pitch is really good, I'm likely to build a relationship with you than with someone else.
No, but the issue is like there are editors like you who who don't give any importance to other things apart from work. But there are other things that there are certain editors, like maybe 50%, where it matters. It happens, and it happened with me.
One thing that I would like to, often what we freelancers don't understand is that the editors are really hard pressed for their time and resources. You know, even most of the editors who would work round the clock wouldn't be able to give as much of time and attention that they would want to give to work with the freelance writer. So in this context, there is a lot of comments coming in of how to give workshops for freelance writers. I think there is a huge dearth of, when you pass out of a journalism school, it doesn't exactly teach you of how to write good stories or pitch or do your legwork in the proper way that needs to be done to get you that attention. So rather than for us looking for editors to handhold us through some of this very difficult phase, it is good for, I would look forward to NWMI to have some such workshops for freelance writers on how to get, do this bit of handholding for freelance writers to get their, writing really work for them, to get the pitches really work for them. And it's very important, as Samar said, to deliver on your deadlines. I think Ashish or Rupa, do you want to take this up and further elaborate on how to go about this?
No, he's not audible. Okay, so I'll just pitch in. Sorry, I forgot what was the question, but very quickly, because I know we are running out of time. What exactly you asked, Leena, or I just wanted to talk a little bit about how to write a good pitch. That a lot of people are asking that. Did you want me?
Yes.
Was that your question?
Yes.
Okay. I think I completely agree with Samar, and what Varsha is saying is also true. But what we can talk on our behalf is that certainly your idea and your story really matters. No, it doesn't matter how well you know the editor. So if you have, and because original stories are the way forward, and most of the media organization would like to get original story that is from the ground reports. I think if you are closer to the story, you stand a very good chance to get that story commissioned to you. Pitch is very, very important. I agree with Samar. Sometimes we do struggle with that. So, maybe later on, I'm very happy to share how BBC, the pitch form of the BBC, where we definitely want to know what is your headline? How are you selling? Headline really works for us. Then what is the story? Who you are going to talk to? Why it really matters for us? Sometimes it doesn't need a lot of context. We do take up stories which is not like, big national level or big macro story. It's just a very simple story. That also kind of, is very exciting for us. So it differs. The idea is that you just you tell us what is your story, the headline, who you are talking to, why it is important. These are the three basic things. Of course, deadline will be very, very important, and what exactly you're going to offer. Is it a text? It's a video? It's a photo series? That is what I'll say about the pitch. There's a question, Leena, very quickly. I wanted to say that how do we pitch to BBC English? you can write to me separately. I can help you, understand how BBC pitching works. I don't want to take up a lot of time here. My email address is with Leena and with everybody else. I'm very happy, and I'm sure Ashish would be very happy to engage with you. Any support that we can provide, and we do accept stories even if you don't file in the language that we are operating. If your idea is brilliant, we certainly will pick up. That's what my last word will be.
Yeah, hi. There's a lot of questions coming in again. Neha, also there are questions on how to, where to look for awards. And I think one of the things that we have talked about is, I don't know whether it was Meher or Neha who has flagged to me that it's very important to look out in a year for awards and to push your stories for that and get recognition from them. It's also important to use social media to your benefit to put your stories out there, create interesting news stories if you want to take up on that. There's a lot of questions on sharing list of freelance journalism courses. I hope Meher is posting on that. Neha, do you want to take up any of those questions that you have seen coming your way?
Yeah, three quick points I wanted to make. That first of all, when you switch to freelancing, it is full-time journalism. It is not anything else. This is full-time journalism. You need to have fixed 8 to 10 hours every day, fixed hours of working. And it may seem very silly, but I'm saying that these things are important because sometimes when you switch to freelancing, nobody takes you seriously. And if you're working from home, it becomes all the more difficult for yourself also. So full-time journalism, 8 to 10 hours of work every day. And also figure out how many articles you need to do in a month to have a bare minimum of whatever 20, 25, 30,000 rupees. And till the time you do not finish pitching and doing those 4 or 5 articles per month, please don't stop. What happens is, if one pitch is rejected, second pitch is rejected, we stop pitching. So for your own sake, you have to tell yourself that every month I have to pitch 4 or 5 articles so that I get bare minimum money to take care of the expenses. Awards, yes, they bring in all kinds of joy and happiness, but more than that, like I was telling earlier, a lot of times there are awards that for me, the award money has helped me do my reporting. And this is also because as a freelancer, you have to keep learning to subsidize your reporting. Like I said, a lot of times there is no news gathering expense that you get. There is a lot of other stuff that you need to do. So award money helps you do good stories, sometimes which organizations may not be able to give you money for to travel. Also, the other thing that somebody mentioned, social media. Yes, social media is important for dissemination of stories. But I think it's very important that I say it, and if you disagree with it, please let me know later. Don't focus more on opinion journalism. Try to do exclusive ground report stories, because ground reporting always has archival value. And you always have something that editors will look at to pitch more work. If you keep putting out opinion and opinion, it will also exhaust you, and it will also exhaust. It will make you predictable to your readers and to your editors also. So try to do more exclusive ground report stories, and which is why it will help you build some kind of pitches. International awards, like I said, IJNet has all the international awards openings announced every week. To subscribe to the newsletter, that's where I get my information from. So please do that.
Neha, also about ID and accreditation for journalists, and also Geeta has pointed out there's a pitches getting stolen as there is serious worry coming in, and unethical editors who then assign it to others. How does one protect oneself from such practices? Do you want to talk about?
So accreditation, I don't know, because I don't know if in the times that we are living in, there are only certain kinds of journalists who can get that, because it's controlled by the government. But like I said, because we have to not let our work stop, try to get temporary contributor cards from the organizations that you regularly write for. So they'll give it to you for 3 months, 4 months, 5 months. So try and do that. Also, stories getting stolen. Yes, it happens. Pitches getting stolen. It happens. It's a real thing. So which is why it's important to have it on email. A number of times, things that I have done is, once when I was not getting paid for the longest time, it had been 16 months for a story I had done, and I was also facing legal cases. I copied some people from NWMI in the follow-up mails to get that money. So sometimes that kind of pressure building helps. Of course, writing on Twitter or writing on Facebook is going to completely burn bridges. But sometimes when you feel completely isolated and you need some support, it's good to do it privately with some people building pressure. Second thing also is, yes, stories get stolen. So which is why it's also important to have that on mail. And if some supposedly it happens to you, next time and you see the story, put a mail again, copy at least 2 or 3 journalists that you know from whichever collective you are, even if you're not some people, so that there is a trail and you have an alibi for that. That's very important. So I think that is one way of going about it.
Right. Thank you. So Samar, if you have anything that you want to especially add inputs to this conversation, please.
I can't think of anything specifically. Everyone has pretty much said everything. If there are any specific questions, I'd be happy to answer. But again, I would only like to reiterate that the importance of a pitch and the importance of believing that a story that's developing around you is of no interest to a national audience. It's not that it's of no interest. It is that you have to make it of interest. And every story, locally can certainly become of national importance. It's up to you as to how to do it. We are always happy to work with people who would like to, I'm always happy to talk to anyone who'd like to figure out how to do that. So I'm available on that score at any point of time.
Right. Also, this is a real concern that Neha has also talked about, of pitches getting stolen. So if a freelancer has put in a pitch and then the newsroom has a staff writer, most probably that story is going to get to the staff writer. So how does one protect oneself? Ashish or Samar, if you want to talk about how to protect oneself and elaborate on that.
I don't know if I'm the right person for that, because we don't have full-time staffers at all. In fact, we work only with freelancers. We have no staffers.
Right.
Currently, yeah. So I'm not sure I don't know how to work with that. But that also has says a lot about the editor you're working with. I mean, I'm not so sure that you should try working with such editors who obviously have a singular lack of ethics, because there's no such guarantee. If you've given a story and they divert it to their own staffer, then why are you continuing working with them?
Rupa or Ashish, you want to elaborate on that? Ashish,
Ashish, go ahead. Tumhari ab awaaz aa rahi hogi.
Sorry, I lost the audio. Could you please repeat the question? There is some technical problem at my end.
Oh, okay. So we were talking about the ethics, that the stories that you pitch in, the freelancers of, there is complaint that it often gets stolen and assigned to someone else. So how do you protect yourself from that?
Yes, it has happened at various occasions, but I think now we also should look at the positive side of it, because thanks to this pandemic, the budgets will be tighter. So parachute journalists coming from Delhi and Bombay to your small towns will be, I mean, there will be lesser parachutes flying from Atlanta, London, Dubai to your cities. So local journalists will get a better chance. And I think, again, because of fear of the infection, they will not be traveling to smaller villages and towns as much as they would do earlier. So I think now is also an opportunity for freelancers, especially in small towns or regional and other languages, I mean English, Hindi, etc., to do more and better stories. And yes, the fear will always be there, but I think now, since lesser journalists will be traveling from bigger cities to smaller places, the fear will be lesser, I feel.
I think just to add to what Ashish is saying, how do you save yourself? I think of course, have that trust relationship, because if you don't have it, then obviously there's no point working. As Samar rightly said, if your editor is so cheap and unethical, then you better not work with such organization. Secondly, is if at all your idea is getting stolen, I think you should have the courage to challenge, because unless if you don't call out such people, this will continue. Once you call out and they really they realize that no, this is really not done. How we go about sometimes that sometimes there's a good idea, but the way we want it to work for BBC international audience or global audience, we feel that that particular freelancer may not be able to do it. So what we do, we pair that person up with our own reporter, and then we give either it's a joint byline or we give some credit and the payment is there. So I mean, freelancers also will have to kind of know that they are valuable. They are valuable to the organization. So don't ekdam matlab bitch jaane ki zarurat nahi hai. Have your solidly stand on the ground and ask for the due credit. That helps. Sometimes that really helps. If you ask a question, people do take notice of it, and they will try to be better behaved next time. But yes, this can be another way of working on ideas. Pairing up with another reporter, staff reporter, and doing it together. You also sometimes, like I'm reading these comments, there are some new people, new freelancers who are getting into the business. Yes, you might need that mentorship on the job while doing it. It's also a good idea that I have this idea, but I'd love to work with someone else, and then you do it. That could be another way.
Right. Neha, you want to say something about calling out?
Yeah, actually, while I agree with Rupa that sometimes you need to put your need to stop and intervene, but also what I want to say is that calling, because there are such less organizations anyway which pay, and and if you're doing certain kinds of stories, and if you're doing certain kinds of ground reports, or reports that are critical of the people in power, then anyway that scope becomes all the more narrow. And unfortunately, the problem is that with calling out, that a lot of times, even forget stories getting stolen, even for not reminding editors for saying that I haven't been paid for 2 years, can you please pay me, and I need money for my surgery, and reporters get offended. Editors get offended because you're writing those mails. I think it's a lot of us cannot really afford to call out if we need to continue working. So which is why I agree with Rupa, sometimes you need to intervene, but it's also sometimes try to build pressure without calling out. So try to build pressure which is not public, but which is internal, which is private. So that you don't build your bridges, you don't burn your bridges, and you continue getting work. Yeah.
Sure.
So
I mean, when I say call out, I absolutely agree with Neha. We shouldn't just go publicly. So it has become the easiest way to just go and, like say everything out there and start calling out people. No, I didn't mean that. I meant that, you must raise let them know that this is what you have done and I'm not happy about it. That will be the best way forward.
Yeah, Ashish, so there's a question whether someone who cannot write in Marathi can pitch stories for BBC Marathi.
Yeah, I think Rupa answered that question. We do take stories, pitches as well as stories in English, and then we get them translated.
There is a question for Samar. This is about, pitching to 2 places, how editors deal with it.
Sorry, pitching to different places? I didn't understand that.
Yes, more than one place.
Acha, I just saw that, yeah. I mean, editor won't know if you're pitched elsewhere, will he or she?
Yeah, I think as Neha has pointed out, like it's good to pitch at, places, because chances are more of you getting rejected than accepted. So once you don't hear from a particular place in 3 or 4 days, and it's also a very thing that almost all the newspaper organization publications put up submissions, addresses, but then most of them don't look at them, or you never get any response from them. The biggest chances that you'll never hear from them. So it's NWMI has, I don't know whether it's available to everyone, has a list of places that you can pitch to, or editors who would be looking for pitches, or you can hunt social media for editors that are looking out for pitches on particular stories, and then pitch to them accordingly. Otherwise, sending a pitch to multiple submission pages is, I think, is what we should be doing, because most probably the chances are back from them. Yes, Samar?
If I may just say, I think it's important to build a relationship with a few places rather than randomly pitching everywhere all the time. Now, as I said, I find, for example, a big shortage of competent freelance writers, but we have built a relationship with a few, and if they pitch to me, I'm obviously will respond immediately to them because I know who they are, what their capabilities, etc. They are also now not likely to pitch elsewhere. There were a few who would pitch to many places, and then sometimes if I'd say yes, they said, oh sorry, I've pitched it to another place, and they've accepted. So that's not something I used to be very pleased. I understand it, but I don't feel very pleased about it because I respond quickly. And in some of these cases, I had responded within, I think, 2 hours or so. And by which time, of course, somebody else had already got it. So obviously, I would like to build at least semi-exclusive, and Indian publications don't usually have money to build exclusive relationships, but I would like to build semi-exclusive relationship out of working understanding, certainly, that if you're pitching to me, then you will give me some time at least to respond. And a reasonable time, I think, is definitely in these days when everyone is connected. I certainly think that if you have a good pitch, you should get a response within 4 or 5 hours at the most, but you should give that much time at least. If you're pitching to multiple places, I mean, you're free to pitch to multiple places, but I think it's far better to have a relationship with a few places and pitch to them. And I think that is a far better way of making a living as well, I would assume, because you know these people, you know whether they pay quickly or not, and whether they are reliable, and whether they work according to a certain set of standards and ethics.
Okay, there's a question from Prachi that some website that I approached said that they would like an article or two free at the beginning. What should one do then? Also, some state that they cannot pay more than 300, 500 per story. What should a person do then? So I think we have almost covered this, that it's, as I think Neha had put it, it's not worth working when they are not paying you at least the amount that compensates for the effort that you're putting in. Neha or Meher, do you want to elaborate more on that?
I mean, your stories are really important, right? Like, I mean, if you're freelancing, you're putting your heart and soul into the story. And so it's better to just publish it on your blog, because at least then you're building, you're directing traffic to your blog, and you're building and you're being recognized for your, for your niche. So, I mean, at least do that. But if you're getting 400 to 500, I mean, that's the minimum wage, honestly, and you deserve better.
Right. There's one question that I had, which is how to use social media to your benefit. Because most often when you are a freelancer, you are managing this whole thing. You're managing your accounts, you're managing your office. As Neha said, you have to put in fixed work hours every day. It can't be like, if you're going to mold yourself into a very successful freelancer, and always concentrate on to deliver articles on time and deliver it according to the word count given. So how to build the brand for yourself is something that I think everybody will need to know. Whoever wants to take that up first, Neha or Kavitha, Meher.
Actually, so as a freelancer, what happens is if, and I don't mean it in a bad way, I'm just pointing out that this happens. So let's just be prepared for it. What happens is when I've noticed a couple of times when the stories are done by staffers in an organization, because they have access to the social media team, those articles are pushed very frequently. So which is why as a freelancer, you need to take the added responsibility of disseminating your pieces. And why I also say this is because recently in the last 3-4 years, I've come across international fellowships where they ask for your number of social media followers when you're applying. And this is absolutely unfair, but I'm saying that this has already started happening in the application process. So which is why I don't like to put out too many, like I'm not every day active on social media, but mostly I try to use it each time my story is out. I try to put it in every possible way. I don't, so it's very important to be, so recently I've joined Instagram because I realized that a lot of millennial readers are moving to Instagram. So it's important for your own sanity, don't tweet and don't put out stories on everything that is happening in the world. But yes, you have to make extra effort to keep plugging your stories on social media. So on Twitter, and whatever new medium is working in your specific geographical locations, please use it and please put it out. Also, create a mailing list for yourself so that each time you do a story, also email it to a few people who think you are interested in the same issues that you're writing on. So that way also the story gets disseminated.
So we are close to winding up this session. I think there is one question that is repeatedly, how and where are there networks for freelance journalists, including men? For women, of course, I have pitched for NWMI as a great place to build a community for yourself. But I'm not aware of anything which includes people of all gender. Maybe anybody else here has an idea could enlighten on that. Also, yeah, that's one thing everybody has been asking about. Any ideas, anyone? No, right? Yeah, so I'm just hoping there'll be more organizations starting for freelance journalists that include people of all gender. We'll have to wind up this session now. Thank you so much, Neha, Kavitha, and Meher, for your valuable opinions on how to navigate this field. I hope This has been very useful for people who are starting out. And Samar, Rupa, and Ashish Dikshit, thank you so much for what we should expect from you guys. You all joining. Hope you all have a good time and successful freelance career. Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Leena.
Important to speak about freelancing today because a lot of people that I know are turning to freelancing.
So prepare, keep 3 months for yourself, give yourself that kind of buffer time.
When there is no contract, there is absolutely no responsibility. Freelancers should ask for it.
Freelancers, I think in general, do not pitch their stories well.
Only then will you be able to get the attention of that editor and get him to work with you when he sees the effort that you're putting in.
I would recommend taking a couple of courses. Remember that stress is really, we just talked about mental health.
And we do freelancing not only with journalists, but we do also freelancing with production staff.
One more thing I wanted to say, please buy health insurance.